First want to say that
My doctor.
it's surely an honor for me to be here among you people. I'm not a relative, and yet, and yet you invite me, and it's just a pleasure to be here and to be part of this loving family. And just the way you treat each other and so forth, it's just a great thing for me to be among you people. So thank you so much. And I'm not hero or anything like that, and especially in relationship to the war. I was not a hero. I was told that you might be interested in my experiences in the Second World War, and so that's what I'll talk about a little bit. And maybe some of you people know a lot more about it than what I do, but for my experiences, it was great. I was talking with some of the folks the other day, and I was wondering, and we were wondering what would happen if we had an emergency today. Would our young people, if we had a draft, would they go and draft? And so on, and it makes you think a little bit, doesn't it? It was, I was drafted, well, I was about to be drafted. I was, let's see, I was 23 years old when I was about to be drafted. I was teaching at that time, and well, they were getting close to my name, and so I would be drafted soon. Well, I had a friend who was a friend from the First World War. He had lost a leg in the First World War, and yet he talked to me, and I thought, well, I'll talk to him about going into the service. And I didn't know anything about the service. I didn't know needs about it. And so he said, well, whatever you do, don't go in the infantry. And he explained why, because they're up there in the front lines and so forth, and you can better be back someplace and stay out of the infantry. So I volunteered, and I was supposed to be drafted anyway. So I volunteered because then I could choose the division of where I wanted to serve. Well, I was a math major, and so that helped with that, and took a lot of tests. And I went in as a volunteer officer candidate, so that I could choose where I wanted to. And I chose that in the artillery. And this was at the time that Japan was sending a few things over the west coast, and Germany had the U-boats in the Atlantic and so forth. And so I thought, well, you'd be in the artillery, in the coast artillery, that would be a place to serve in case they did any more. Well, so I joined and got my commission in the anti-aircraft. They called you in those days, they called you the 90-day wonders, because you went as a private, and after 90 days, after you got to the school, then you had your commission as a second lieutenant. And so we were known as the 90-day wonders, getting into the officer candidate school. But then at least I could choose that. Well, I was over then at Camp Davis in North Carolina, on the ocean there, and we were working with the anti-aircraft. And they 90 millimeter guns that we were using to shoot at airplanes who had the head of the and that's the trouble with getting old. You can't say what you want to say anymore. But nobody listened to me then either. So. But anyway, go there, and we would shoot at the big balloon. Well, not a balloon. I don't know what it calls.
Blimp? A
Big
blimp? A blimp?
No,
A blimp?
no. We had a big canvas place that was hauled behind an airplane,
A glider.
Well, that isn't what it was. It was a long thing about, I would say maybe 40 feet long and about 10 feet in diameter, all behind an airplane going along the coast. And then we would shoot at that place, but sometimes target. It was a target that we had in the planes coming over on the coast. And but see, this was in the early days of the war. We had an old computer in that time, but it was still based. You had three parts really. We had a hearing place, which was two phones up here, one down here, and one on the side. So you got your altitude and your azimuth from those, and you could turn those around. But it was so simple in those days because you'd have an airplane flying, and so you had to get the sound from that airplane. And so you had this to put on to get the sound in this way, so you could go this way and up and so on and find out where that sound is coming. But with sound traveling 1/5 of a 5 seconds in 1 mile, by the time we heard it over there and put it in the computer, that plane wasn't there anymore. You can see where you're listening on sound and doing all this on sound. It's just so poor. But that's what we do. We turn the information into the computer then. But then we had a 90mm guns. Well, that means that you had to set that gun on the information that you got so that you shot ahead of the plane. But you couldn't see where it was, or it was there. And then at the 90mm at the end of it, of the head of the shell, you had a computer in there, so that you put in there when it was going to explode. But then you had to estimate again of where that plane was and shoot ahead of it, so that that shell got up there by the time that plane got there, and then it would burst. You can see, you see how this was first class, all right.
I put a beanbag in a little hole.
Right.
But that's, we weren't used to war when the Second World War started like that, and the aircraft firing and so on. But you had the searchlights and so on, so at night you could do the same thing. But it was poor. Well, anyway, that's what, so I was fortunate enough that after I graduated, I stayed on at the school, and I could teach that. Can you imagine that? I didn't know anything about it, but I had to teach it. But that was it.
It's the Army way.
And so I stayed in the school and taught there for a while. Well, then we got air superiority in Europe. And so we didn't need the old-fashioned thing. Well, just before that time we got air superiority, we got radar. And radar, of course, was instant, so you knew where it was and did away with all this guessing and so forth of the machines, so that you knew where something was. I went down to Florida to the radar school there and do that. Well, I stayed on as an instructor for a while, and then we got air superiority in Europe. And so they didn't need anti-aircraft as much anymore. So one day I looked up and my name was on the board. I'm now transferred to the infantry. So
You got your wish.
So I had to go through basic training again down in Georgia. And same kind of thing and so forth. But for some of you that interested in the basic training, you learned, of course, how to everybody going in, how to shoot a rifle and so on, how to take it apart and put it back together, and on the rifle range and so forth to shoot, and all those, and bayonet practice and all of that stuff that you had to So there was a dummy there, and you take your rifle with the bayonet stick down to poke it into him, and pull it out again, run through a couple steps and poke him in again, so on for basic training. Basic training in all of the services, I think, are for one thing. When we aren't used to having anything to say about some things, and you have basic training is so that you don't say a word unless somebody tells you something, and you just do without thinking. You have to do what he says, and that's the only thing you can do. If they tell you to run 10 steps, you run 10 steps. If they tell you to sit down, you sit down, or anything like that. Anybody that has a higher rank than what you have can tell you what he wants you to do, and you have to do it. Well, that, we aren't used to that. But you don't say, oh, I don't want that, or I want this to be a better way, or anything. You just do it. But that's the way, really, the only way you can have an army, or any compulsory thing like that. If you know you had to say, hey, please, will you go over there or something? And they say, no, I don't want to go. I'm tired today or something. You just can't do it in a army or any military position. So we got our air superiority, and I was transferred to the infantry. I was down in Texas then, and I was supposed to go to the South Pacific, go to California, to sail out from there. But while I was there, we had the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium, and that was in Europe, of course, and so they had the Battle of the Bulge, and so my orders were changed. Instead of going to California, I had to go to New York and take a ship across to the Atlantic. And we went in a convoy, and the Atlantic Ocean was supposed to be so nice and so forth, but we were in a small ship, and the whole convoy was go one way and then turn the other way and then go like that all the way over there to avoid the U-boats. And then when it's a little rough, I'll tell you, those tables tip pretty, and all the tables have about a 2-inch or more round, so that your plates don't slide off or something. But anyway, we got there and landed at Scotland. And as soon as we got off the ship, we went in through the train down to Southampton, and went across there to France. So we landed in France. From there, they shipped us out to go to wherever they needed someone. We were known as replacements, and there were maybe about 25 those officers in a freight train, or what's a cab?
Regiment?
Beg pardon?
Regiment?
No, I mean on the train. Just the boxcar. That we were in a boxcar there going on this train, and I still think that boxcar that we were in had square wheels because it was bouncing all the time. But there was no place to lie down, and there were no seats in it or anything like that. Just an empty old boxcar that they were sending us to the front. We got to where I had to go, and different people were let off, different replacements to different places and so on. But when I got there, then I was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division. Now, the 3rd Infantry Division is a regular Army outfit. And so they had been already in North Africa at the beginning of the war, and had gone up through Anzio and so forth, through Italy, into France at that time when I joined them on the border of France and Germany. So that's where I first night there was a big building that was being built. They had all the stairs and all the walls and sun, but there was no ceiling on there, no roof on there, no windows or anything like that. And we got there, and then the artillery started coming in to us. And down, you know what? We didn't know anything about what to do or where to go and so forth. So do you fly down along the outside wall or the inside wall, or do you go under the steps or something like that? Nobody there to tell us anything about it. And so we just waited, but fortunately they didn't get our building and so forth. And in the morning we found out, where the other people, the regulars were, they were underground and so forth. So I was as the communication officer for the 1st Battalion of the 7th Infantry of the 3rd Division. And we were then on the Rhine River. They had come up, as I said, from France, through France, from Italy and so forth. And we're on the Rhine River. A few days after I was there, well, every day we had to go along the Rhine River to see whether or not any of the Germans who were on the other side had crossed the river during the night or something like that. But we were there to be taken off the line. The 3rd Division was taken off the line to go to Nancy in France and to prepare for crossing the Rhine. And so we were over there, and we were at a lake, and they'd have a little motorboat there, and then we'd have to jump in the motorboat, cross the lake, get out, run, come back, run and jump in the motor, and thing again, and come back, and so on, just for training and crossing the Rhine River. I have here a history of the 3rd Division here and so forth, and you can look at those things afterwards and so. But that was my first start there. Then we were right there. The Rhine River was right on the border there with France and Germany. And so we were finally, this was in January of 45. So that France has already been liberated, and the Netherlands and Belgium and so forth all have been liberated at that time. But then we still had Germany to go. And so we were right at the border of Germany. And so I'm not sure of the date, but we had to go at night there. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning, I think we had to go and march. Before we went there, it was a strange thing, for me anyway, that you had to take the patches off or cover up the patches on your shoulders. They didn't want anybody to know it was the 3rd Division. They didn't want anybody to know your rank or anything. You had to take all those things off. And why the secrecy, I never did find out. But I guess they just wanted to go there without anybody knowing what group of the army was in there. But anyway, we walked along the road going into Germany. It's a small little town that we went to first. But being the communication officer, I had a great privilege. I was not in the rifle companies. The rifle companies are the ones that have to go out with a rifle and cross the fields and so forth, and watch out for we were coming in there, and there were a lot of mines that were set up in a farm there, and we had to skirt those and so forth. But about my first it was a short time when we were in there that there was a building in a field, big field. There was a building, and there were some people, someone in there, some Germans, and they were shooting out of the basement of that place. And so someone had to go over there with some hand grenades and throw them in the basement windows and so forth. And one man came out, and instead of surrendering, he started running. And I'll tell you, that's not the thing to do. But he was running there and so forth. In the back of that farm place there was a little coop, and I was walking through that coop. And there, sitting on a little ledge or in that kind of like a chicken coop, there sat about 4 or 5 German soldiers that had been taken captive. And, just the look on their faces of what's going to happen to me now. That they were just, you could just see the fear in their faces. But that's war. And for some of you, I don't know what you did here or had here during the war, but in Michigan, we had some prisoner camps, German prisoners that came in and were in Michigan. Most of us wished we had come back and let them fight on the other side or something. Maybe that'd be a thing in the next war. If you're a prisoner, you have to start fighting against your own side rather than go to a prison war.
Down there where we live, they had a bunch of those German prisoners that were sent over. After the war, well, during World War II.
Yeah. There were a lot of Jews in Michigan. Well, anyway, then our biggest problem, I guess we would say, in going into Germany, was the Germans between the Germany and France. They had the Siegfried Line, and so that is on their border. The Maginot Line was the line that the French had made for their defense, but the Germans had the Siegfried Line, and so there are pictures in here of that Siegfried Line. They had, they called them
Say it louder.
teeth.
Oh, yes.
Pillboxes?
No.
Well, they had pillboxes. Yeah, they had
Dragon's teeth?
dragon's teeth. They called them dragon's teeth, and there's some pictures in here about the dragon's teeth where they came in. They're about that high and in a pyramid shape, about that high, made of cement and so forth, and just row and row of those. And first of all, they had a wall. They had their pill boxes. They had these great big pill boxes, the size of that room in there, dining room, and they had those on the high part, and they had everything leveled in front of it. And then in the pill boxes, there was a little space there where they could shoot through the space there, and it shoot about a foot off the ground right there in front of it. And then there were trenches in front of that and so forth, and then in front of that barbed wire, and then these dragon's teeth, and then there was a wall that they had that so a tank come up, couldn't cross in there. It was just a square and couldn't get up and so forth. But then there are pictures of that in here for you. One of my friends there, Lieutenant Rebovich, was telling me that he was in one of those trenches in front there, and a German came on the other end of the trench and so forth, and he came there and he raised his rifle and so forth, but his rifle wouldn't fire, so he threw his rifle at him. Unfortunately, the German turned around and was running back out of the place and so on, so he was. But that's the type of thing that the infantry had to go through. And as a communication officer, I was involved with the laying of telephone lines and telephones. We had the old cranking telephone, you know, that would crank somebody up there. We had the walkie-talkies. That's all you had at that time, communication. And if I should say we, I guess, but got one of the what I just call it now, I can't think of it again.
Pillbox?
Pillbox, yeah, one of the pillboxes there got in there, and I was at the headquarters of the company, or the Italian headquarters, and so I tried to communicate and so forth with him, but of course he couldn't use the telephone, we didn't have the telephone, he couldn't really use the radio in there, so he'd have to go outdoors in order to talk and give me orders of where I was and so forth. It was very poor communications, we would call it today, something like that. But anyway, we were there, and after we got in one of those and so forth, then had the Germans counterattacked at night, and they took our 2nd battalion. I was in the 1st battalion, they were in the 2nd battalion, and the 3rd battalion. You always have 2 battalions on the line and 1 in reserve. So the 1st and the 2nd were on the line, and the 3rd was in reserve. And so they were captured that night. And so then on, of course, it was 1st, the 3rd that were on all the time. And yeah, it was just, but we were tied down there, and then Patton came from the north, and with his tanks and so forth. And all once one morning, the Germans had all left. They'd all pulled out of there and went back. So, otherwise I guess we'd still be staying there because it was they were well prepared for that. Of course, when they got moving back, then the tanks could come up, and the engineers and so forth, and then they could blow up the Dragon's Teeth and so forth, and you didn't have to have a big section. They could fill in one section where the tanks could go and blow up the Dragon's Teeth and let trucks go through there and everything else. There are also some pictures in here of the crossing of the Rhine. That first pontoons walking across, and then later you get some of the bigger stuff in there so that they could take the trucks across the river. The Germans, of course, and you know the story how that almost every time they left, they would blow up the bridges, and that would always be a big factor of it for the Americans to. So, once getting into Germany, Nuremberg was a difficult time because Nuremberg was really the headquarters of the army over there, and you saw the pictures of the flags of Nuremberg and all of that stuff. But yeah, we'd go from one town to another in the big towns and so forth. But when you had air superiority, what a great thing that was, that we could go in and the planes go ahead and so forth. And do a lot of damage. Then, yeah, we went into one little town, and they had the surrender. They had sheets out in front of the houses and so forth. And we were still in there. One place, someone was sniping. You could hear the shots and so forth. And somebody went up there to see it, and there was a boy upstairs, and he was 13 years old. He was sniping. There, 13 years old. Reminds you of some of the pictures you've seen of Hitler when at the end, when you had the little boy there, you maybe saw him patting a boy on the cheek or something like that. And the old people that he was patting in his arm. Yeah. anyway, the farther we got in there, of course, the more they recognized that it was just a matter of time. But I can remember we had a convoy going along one of the roads there, and a German airplane came over and strafing and so on. They had to jump out of the jeeps and so on and hit that ditches and so forth over there. We got into one field, one woods there, and there were a little deer. They looked about like fawns that you'd have here, and that were in that woods there. And so forth. But anyway, we got in there and took a few prisoners. And we took one prisoner and asked him if there were any more in there on the other side, there by the woods. And he gave his name, rank, and serial number. That's what they always say. That's all you have to do in the Army. Give them name, rank, and serial number. Well, we had a doctor with us, and a lot of the people walking got canes out of the houses and so forth where we stayed. And he gave that guy a clomp on the head with that cane. And then he said, I think there were 3 there or something, but they maybe left here. So after that, he took the man over and fixed him up, and he's just
Hurt him and then keep
Got his attention.
there were at the close, of course, they were going giving up quite readily. Although in almost every little town there was a group that was stationed there, and they would fight for a little while and then finally give up. We'd go on to the next.
Tell them about your note.
Yeah, okay. We were going, it was getting pretty close. We started on the western front of Germany and went all through Germany, and we were going into Austria already. We were coming into that place, and in fact we ended up at Salzburg in Austria, and then went on to Berchtesgaden and so forth. But we were coming there, and we were in a convoy going, and you had night with the jeeps. You had just the little lights, 2 little lights on each fender.
Cat eyes.
Cat eyes?
Cat eyes, yeah, little cat eyes that you had. You couldn't see anything, but at least someone coming could see that there was somebody there. And we were there, and we were going cross field and so on. And Jeep driver and we got out of line. And I don't know how far we got out of line, but we couldn't find our way back to the line. And we were supposed to be traveling to some town or something, I forget the town. So we were there all by ourselves. And we got to a little house there, and all the curtains were drawn and so forth. But my driver could talk a little German, and he went over there to see, but he couldn't get any information from them because they wouldn't tell him, or said they didn't know, I guess. But there was a little village up ahead, just a little town, and there was a light there on the square that they had. And while we went in there to find out which way we had to go to where we were supposed to go. And we went in there under the street light. We went under the street light to read the light of where we were supposed to go. And it was dark, of course, and I took out the map and so on, and we're looking at that, and I heard some somebody coming with his cobble shoes. And so, plunk, 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 you know, on the bricks at the square there in the center of the town. And there were different places going direction north, south, east, and west, and so forth in that place. And so I was under the light with my driver, and we were looking at the map, and we heard this man coming. And he handed me this note. And it says in here, it says, one officer and 46 soldiers have laid down arms and are waiting for surrender. Signed, Kaufman and his Captain Zimmerman, German Army. So what am I going to do with
Holy cow.
46 soldiers over there in the middle of the night when I didn't know where I was? So I didn't know what to do. So I finally, I put this man on the front of my Jeep and had him hang on in the front of this Jeep, in front of there. And I told him he had to tell me which road I had to go and where and so to the town that I wanted to go to. And so he was on the Jeep doing that. And we got out of town and so forth and got to where we were supposed to be. When I got there, then I turned him over to the military police there. But you know, that thing bothered me afterwards. I was just wondering what the other people were thinking. The others 46 and the officer were thinking there maybe happened to their man
Yeah.
on there and so forth. I just hope that if he was in that little town, he must have known that town and and his people were there. He must have had some experience and some, speaking to some of his friends there, and he maybe told them that I didn't hurt him or shoot him or something like that. But and we had another one. The driver and I were going along the road, and there were two young German soldiers out coming out of the woods there. And we stopped, and they came up with their hands up. And what do you do out there alone? I don't know how I got alone so often. They were there in the crew, and what do you do? Two German soldiers with their guns, and so they came with their hands up, and then they gave us each a gun. I took one, and the driver took the other. And we didn't take what to do with the guns and so forth. But my driver took that gun, and he took it by the barrel like this, and there was a tree there. He went and he hit against that tree. When he did that, he hit like that, and the barrel was like that, and it fired. That it was in so that it was fired in that. So I didn't try that. I took the gun apart a little bit so that it couldn't be used, and so on, and we just went. And this is, Then we went on into Salzburg, which is in Austria. And then there's Berchtesgaden, is where Hitler had his summer home. And so we were supposed to be relieved by the French in Salzburg. I was happened to be by our general, O'Daniel. And he said, wouldn't it be great if the 3rd Division took Berchtesgaden? And I thought, yeah, fine. You be the first guy walking up that road over there. If Hitler is there, we didn't know whether he was there or whether he was in Berlin. And so we didn't know. And I thought, well, I wouldn't mind being replaced by the French. but he sent us up there. fortunately for us that there wasn't any shots fired, except that the SS troopers were up there and they were blowing up their part of the place, of Hitler's home, so that we wouldn't get it. So one of the special days I had coming, which was Easter, which was way, of course, what, April maybe, or thereabouts, when we were there. And we had, it was really a battle at night, the night before Easter. And the chaplain came up to our battalion, and we had Easter service in the farmyard by a barn of a farm over there. And we had Easter service. But there weren't very many there because most of them were resting by our headquarters there, so I was there. There were maybe 8 or 10 of us that for Easter service was very important to us. We all went, you don't want to sleep outdoors or anything like that. So we get into a little town and then, you take over a house and stay there. We got into one house and we were in there and it's much easier, to warm your stuff, your beans or whatever you happen to get in your sea rations on a stove than on a fire someplace, or eat them cold. And we got in that house and we heard something in the house. And there was a room there, and went in there, and there was an old German fellow there in that house all by himself. He reminds me of the old pictures, of the praising hands. That old picture of an old man with his hands like this. He reminded me of that. And I'd go over there and talk to him. But I had a little German and so on, and with a little Dutch, I could make myself known to him. And so, I used to, if you had coffee there, ersatz coffee, substitute coffee. That's what they made out of some oats or whatever they had. They put their coffee like that, and he had some of that. And in our rations we had the Nescafe. Remember that? The little packages that you had and so forth. So I'd go in there with that and give him some of our stuff there. But he just stayed in there all the time. I went into a little town, and there was a church there. I went into that church, and they must have just had a funeral there of a German soldier, of course, because everything was there. Yet they must have just left there in a hurry. And the things that they had, German flags, and just everything that you could see that they just left. Well, then we got into the Berchtesgaden, and that's where the war ended. We were there May 8th war, and we were in with them, so we were there. So stayed on as in Salzburg. Any questions?
How did you come by that German movie?
Beg your pardon?
How did you come to get the German movie?
We had, no problem getting, when the German surrender and so forth, that officers carried the Luger and the other rifles and so forth, and I had so many of those. And I was fortunate in having a Jeep with the wires, that we had to supply and so forth, and so I had a Jeep, and so a lot of the time I could ride in the Jeep. And I know from one soldier, he had a beautiful set of binoculars, and I had that and carried it in the Jeep, and I got so tired of carry that thing around. I remember going past the valley there one time. I finally threw that thing in the valley. But yeah, we had opportunity to get quite a few. I had quite a few. Clarissa's brother was also in Germany, and I, as an officer, I could take guns home, but he was an enlisted man, and he could only take one home. I got hurt. Just to after the war, I'll have to go back there. After the war, then we were. What are you going to do with all these soldiers? Keep them in shape. So you'd have to go on a hike, And I was tired of walking 25 miles or something just to keep in shape, and so on. So they had little things there for us to do. Once they wanted me to teach some of the soldiers who couldn't read or write. And I started with that, and I thought, how do you start with somebody who can't write a letter, or can't read a letter, and so forth. And that wasn't my cup of tea either. So then in the headquarters, they wanted me to write a history of the 3rd Division. I'm not a writer, so I couldn't do that. But one day there was they were going to start a division baseball team. And I thought, well, maybe I could try out for that baseball team and play a bit of baseball. And then I could go to the various places in Germany and see some Germans. So the headquarters of that goes to Salzburg. Other division teams throughout Europe and play. Well, one day we went to Linz, Austria. We were playing another division team down there, and we had a guy from the Cubs was our catcher. We had a pitcher. Throw both right-handed and left-handed. And one of the guys that we had was from Milwaukee, the old Milwaukee Buckhands, I guess it was, something like that. And he told me, and those dumb guys, they would bet on everything. Those guys, all they had to do was play baseball after the war and so on. But I was still with my unit. Then I could go there and practice with them, and then we could go out and games. But those guys when I was there, they'd be playing horseshoes. And it was nothing for those guys to bet $100 that guy's going to throw a ringer. One guy told me he sent $32,000 home and he had won. And in that day, $32,000 was a lot of money. Well, we went up then to Linz play. And I was playing there with him, and I was on second base. And they hit a single, and I was going to score. I went around third base. Well, when you come home, the next batter is standing there and telling you whether you have to slide or stand out. So you don't slide if you don't have to. So I came over there and running in towards home, and he had stand-up sign. So I was coming along with him, and I noticed that the catcher was on home plate, and the catcher wouldn't be on home plate if there wasn't going to be a play. So I came in there and I saw him, and I changed my mind. Only I didn't change it quick enough that I made a poor slide. Instead of just running across or sliding in, I came like that and got my legs under the catcher's legs like that and tipple on over. And so I broke my knee there with that. And in those days, they never operated on a knee because you always would have a stiff knee after that. So I was there. Well, then to make this long story short, and that I had quite a few of the German Lokers and some of the others, the type of small arms that they had. But that was back in Salisbury. So I've been to the hospital at Flemish. And then I got a hold of Clarissa's brother, and I told him to go on over to where I had my stuff and to sell those guns. Well, that was very easy for him to sell those because everybody kind of wanted those guns and so on. But to take one, he could take one, and so I say to sell the other guns and take one home, and we would divide up the money that he made that money. So that's how I got that Luger.
How much did you get?
How much?
You divided it.
Oh, I don't have the slightest idea what it was that what he got for
Well, you went in as they wondered what you come out as.
I was the first lieutenant. When I went in there, I was the second lieutenant when I got my commission, but I was the first lieutenant when I went overseas, and then I came, when I got out of the Army, I was a captain.
That was
John.
my answer there.
Yeah.
Tell them about how you got seasick.
Oh, I was in this, I'll tell you how dumb I am. I was in this hospital, and this was playing on a Saturday. So I was sent to the hospital. Nobody around in the hospital, no doctors or anything, and here I am with that crazy old knee hurting like the dickens. And, but they didn't give me any shot or anything for that. Anyway, I was there, and then later got into a ward, and there were all beds in there, and a lot of the guys would come, they'd come to the bed next to me, and they'd play cards. And so I'd be on the card, on there, and watching down there, on my elbow, like that. And I got bursitis. Oh, it hurt like that. Anyway, I was there, and one day, they were going to send people back to the States, and I was on that list, and it was ambulatory. And I thought, that's fine. If it's ambulatory, that means you ride in an ambulance, and I could do that. So my name was on there, and they were filling in the cars out there to the train, and there was an ambulance there. So, and somebody saw that on there, and they saw me with crutches, and said, "You can't go on there." And the other guys all around me said, "Oh yes, you can." They carried me on there, So I didn't know what ambulatory meant. I thought if it's that, I can ride in an ambulance. Dumb.
You went all through the war, one injured, and got hurt playing baseball.
That's right. That's
It's a dangerous sport, fellas.
Evans, Uncle Albert, he was in World War II, and he brought a 308 Beretta, and he got it there. And Steve got it now. I traded Steve a German Luger with Beretta.
Oh yeah.
And Steve and I traded. He's got that 308 Beretta now.
They said that was I took it to a gun guy, and he said that only the intelligence officer that had a little world with the eagle on it. They said that was an intelligence, like what are those guys? I forget, but they only carried them.
Did he say how much it was worth?
But yeah, the
They
SS
said
or
it's
Stasi
worth
or
quite a
something.
bit.
I don't know how much Luger would be worth today.
I bought the Luger. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, and when the guys come up and he was knowing I buy a gun, I said, "How much you want for it?" He said, $25.
Oh,
I hope that Luger.
good for you.
I watched a program on the History Channel. I think I might have told you about that. They said a German Luger that would fire. And his is in mint condition. I mean, it looks like it came right off the line. It was $6,000.
Well, that one I had,
The one that would just
I
fire.
shot it. Right
We still haven't gotten seasick.
Oh. Well, eventually we got out of the hospital anyway with the guy's help and got on the train. And I still had that bursitis. Gave me so much trouble and so on. But anyway, then we went to France, through France, and got on the ship there. The guys helped me down there, and we were down in the hold of the ship, and they had a cot there. So they went up on deck again and left me alone there in one of the cots. And I fell asleep down there. And I woke up and sick. I was so sick down there. And so I got up and I hobbled over to the porthole and looked out, and we were still at the dock.
Did you get better?
Yeah, better pretty quick, too.
Where did you enter Germany from? What was the border part? What city? Remember?
Well, I don't know, the little city there, we were, as I said, it's in
Did you
here.
come through France into Germany?
Yeah, we're from France. We
you
were
sell
right
each
at the border of
Cherbourg?
France. Big pardon?
Was it Cherbourg where the ship landed
No,
in France?
no, the Cherbourg, that's where I got sent home from.
Oh, was it?
I came home from Cherbourg.
The ship came to Scotland.
But we landed at Keynes, and I came over from England. We landed at Keynes there at that time. And then I also have here a few years ago, 2009. I had the opportunity to go with the Holland American Legion band to go to Normandy, and we went on that over there to Normandy, and that was a great experience to see those cliffs where those poor guys had to land on D-Day.
Right? Tell about how wonderful the people were.
Oh yeah. When we went to France, you know, you hear so much about the French not liking the Americans. Yeah, I like to keep that. Yeah.
Definitely.
That the French don't like. They call them the ugly Americans. You hear that so often over there. That the ugly Americans. And I know before having been there that a lot of people, when you speak English to them, they can understand it all right, but they don't want to answer you in English, you know, and they just let you stand there hoping. But anyway, then the people were very happy in France, where we were, and in the Netherlands, to see the Americans that were there, and so on. And the beaches at Omaha Beach and what's the other one?
Utah?
Utah, yeah, Omaha and Utah beaches and so forth. And that's what this is in Normandy. But to see those cliffs there, you know, and the ships coming in, and Eisenhower didn't want to go into one of their harbors because they were well fortified by the Germans in the harbors, and that's why they went to Normandy, where they didn't expect anybody to come, and where those big cliffs were. But imagine having to, and then out in the ocean, they had these big steel beams cross there, you know, and out in the water that the ships couldn't come in close to the land. And in one of the places there, they had the street or the places from England. They had all old stuff, all kinds of stuff that they could, and they dumped it out there in the ocean, and then they built a road on top of all that stuff. And that's how they landed, got the ships in close enough so that the tanks and everything else could come into that place. But the French and the Dutch were very, very complimentary. Oh, they just couldn't do enough for us over there. And, it was really, really something that, yeah. And that must, they showed us one of the places. This was in the Netherlands. They showed us one of the places where the Germans were. And the people from the Netherlands, they had a memorial there there were 3 crosses, not with limbs, not sawed or anything like that, you know, they're just limbs that they had. And they were small crosses, about that high, maybe down there, 3 crosses. We had to walk about a mile in order to get there. We got to there. We had those 3 crosses. They took part of us over to one side, and there they had a great big bell. And I don't think I've seen a bell that large. But every spring, the Queen of England, of the Netherlands, used to come and ring that bell. She was the only one allowed to ring that bell. And then they had the 3 there, and then they took us around in another section and came back, and they showed us an area there, which the Dutch people who were sabotaging the Germans or something like that, if they were caught, they took them there, men, women, and children. And they had them dig their own graves and then shoot them. So they knew, you know, we've never had anybody running our country. And I went also just the other day to with the honor of the World War II, going to see the monuments in D.C. and so forth. And what was I going to say?
Talking about the stars?
Yeah, the Belgium.
No, no. Well, yeah, they're. We've never, you know, lived under domination of another country like that. And in the 3rd Division, when I was there, from the time that we started into Germany and to the end there, that was in January until May 8th for our 3rd Division. Killed in action.
You need your glasses.
Yeah, I need my glasses.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, would you please?
This is called the Table of Casualties.
This
Killed
is just
in-
for not from when they started, but this was just going into Germany. From
March
into-
15, 1945 through May 8, 1945. So just a few months. Killed in action, 373. Wounded in action, 1,744. Missing in action, 416. Total battle casualties, 2,533. Non-battle casualties, 1,909. Reinforcements and hospital return to unit personnel, officers, I guess that's what OFF is, 56. EM, what is that?
Enlisted men.
Enlisted men, 1970, 1,970. Hospital RTUs, returned to units. Officers, 63. Enlisted men, 1,278. Known enemy casualties, killed 381, wounded 1,020, captured 101,201.
It's sobering that we lost as many people in 2 months as we've lost in 10 years in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom.
In Washington D.C. at the World War II monument now, where I went with as an honor group, that they are taking World War II veterans now because we're losing so many through death of our World War II people, and they wanted to honor. So we went to, they went with me as my guardian over there. Each one of us had a guardian. They had a wheelchair for each one of us that we could be wheeled around there through. But the World War II monument is really something great there. But on that, in that monument, they have a wall, and they have gold stars on the wall. And you remember how it used to be that when people went into the army, the parents would have a little flag there with a star, and if it was a star, there was a blue one. But if the person died, they changed it to a gold star. Well, that wall there has all these gold stars. Over 4,000 of those stars on that wall. But each one of those stars represented 100 who were killed. So that's 400,000 Americans that were killed in the Second World War. So that's but the heroes are the ones who had to go out there and jump in that water and hope to get to the beach. And then when he got there, what was going to happen? He'd climb up those walls and so on. And all the others said, when you that's the trouble with the infantry. You got a row of trees over there. Well, you go over there and see if there are any soldiers up there. So be careful going through that field because it may be mine. But somebody has to go out there and do that stuff. And that's, I have a friend, Post, his name was Post. And he said, oh, I hated the Army. He says, I hated the Army. I wanted to change my name so often because he says our sergeant had a hard time pronouncing all the names, and so there's always Post, you, and so and so. You go.
What about the Belgian guy that's what he said about the military? He would be speaking a different language.
Oh yeah, and at the Washington D.C. at the monument there was a man who was talking to somebody else, and he saw some of the veterans coming, and one man yelled out to him and says, oh, thank you, and they were all saying that to us. He was saying thank you. He says, I'm from Belgium, and he says, if you hadn't come, I'd be speaking Russian.
I'll be speaking Russian.
Russian or German.
German.
Yeah.
It's amazing how Germans do what they did. Small country.
It's true.
But
It was just amazing, but they had the weapons and stuff.
they had planned this for an awful long time already, and so on. But and especially the SS troopers, they were the ones that I remember going to talk to some of the not the prisoners, but the people there, and asked them, here, you couldn't find anybody that was for Hitler. Me nix Hitler. And they're all saying that. said, well, how come the Americans and all these other people had to come and learn to do that? Why didn't you fight against Hitler? He says, if we'd say anything,
That's right. I heard that there were only 10% that were actually Nazis.
yeah.
But they were so afraid, and I mean, the country was in such bad shape anyway, they just went along with it.
Yeah.
Well, probably didn't have weapons.
No, they didn't. And so and then they, well, you know, you had the stories of them telling about their own families. Oh, my dad went to this meeting or something like that, you know, and so Dad was taken away. But again, when you have that much control over somebody,
Price of freedom has a high price.
it surely does. When you think of just the Americans, not look at all the other countries that we have, plus all Japanese and so forth.
Russians.
Over 400,000 killed.
I was stationed on the Dutch-German border, Netherlands and German border, and we got to know a lot of the people from Holland, from Netherlands, and they were, cause their fathers and mothers, they shared property. One side was Holland, one side was Germany, and then one day, their neighbors holding a gun to them seized their farms, and you know they were friends months earlier, and then overnight, and it's that an indoctrination. It's their God-given right to this is what their manifest destiny was, to seize Europe for the common good, and it's a brainwashing over time. They would show. I'd go to a movie in Holland. Most of their stuff was in English, and they instead of showing cartoons like they used to, they would show footage of the war, lest they forget. So,
We should be doing that, shouldn't
Yeah.
Yep.
Last week.
But you know the way they talk, Deutschland über alles.
liberales.
Deutschland über alles. Germany over all the world. You know, and that's what they were told. And who's the best person? A German. You know, you're a German, and so they just ate that up, and they were having trouble in their country, and so anything that would put them ahead of anything, they would join and do that. And then getting away, well, it's too bad. SS troopers